because I've been struggling so much with this, having done, art in between as well. And, art was probably the only thing for me where I could bring in whatever I like.
Yeah.
And it all would have been okay. Whereas most other practices or professions I've been through always looked at certain ways to approach and do things. Always like, oh, that's not, why are you doing it that way? It's like, that's, well, because I'm trying to get to the result, but that was odd, often very, very limited that. And I like to blame Henry Ford on that with the whole de-skilling and trying to create mass production that's actually doable, that we're still suffering from, meaning that, by definition in organizations, we're still squeezed into these really narrow descriptions of skill sets that we're supposed to have, and everything else we're not supposed to even bring in or talk about or take care of, even so we could. And, not just to bring in another one of my anecdotes on, I was applying for Sony PlayStation at some point, and I had this eye-to-eye camera thing on top. And I had done camera-based interactives at the time. So I was a coder and a designer at the time, and they had coders and designers. And when I applied there, I just found question marks over their head. They could not figure out who I am, and therefore I didn't really exist for them. And I said, like, you're getting two for the price of one. You realize that,
Exactly.
Right? And they could not figure this out. They could not figure it out. It didn't go anywhere. It was really bizarre. And so in that sense, and I've seen this again and again by job description and expectations and the way people hire, organizations seem to hire what they think has a value. How, that's finally my question, is how can we revalue these hybrid people? Do they create extra value? Do they create cross value? Why would they be important to companies now? What's your view on that?
I have a lot of layers to that, because hybrids work in the space in between. So it's always going to be gray and blurry, and organizations typically like structure. But there's a couple of things. First is there's an education component, an awareness component that workers themselves need to understand this idea of hybridity and that they can own that and represent that. So they have to learn their own hybridity to market and talk about themselves. On the flip side, organizations also need to understand that this idea of being a hybrid worker exists. And they need to understand there's also different ways they need to recruit and train and manage and retain hybrid talent. So there's two sides of that pie that need education right now, because this is still a largely not well understood concept yet, but it's here and it's the future. And then the other part of this that I was thinking of is there's hybrid jobs and then there's hybrid people and workers. So some jobs are now being written where they're talking about cross-functional talent or needing that multidisciplinary skill set, or someone that works internal and external or at the front end and back end. So when you see these juxtapositions or, like differing needs in a role, companies are actually hiring for a hybrid position and they just don't know to use that term yet. So it's starting to creep up and into the language of hiring. So when you see those clues, you realize like that's a hybrid position. And then for the person themselves, they need to really do some self-awareness. And this is really where I start on the hybrid journey is you have to get clear on what are your professional identities. And then you have to do the work of looking at the intersections of them so you can clearly describe and articulate, here's what I bring to the table. I'm the coder and I'm the scientist and I'm the designer. And that might not make sense to you, but when those are all working together and I'm pulling from those three different areas, I am this incredible like design spark plug that can really help evaluate and work between these different teams and build ideas from analytical and creative perspectives. So you have to make yourself make sense and give examples so that the organization can understand you. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this new hybrid puzzle, but I mean, it's the world's reshaping in front of our eyes. So it's sort of like we're all going to either adapt and catch up, or you're going to be left behind. And one of my favorite reports is from Burning Glass. They did this in 2019, an evaluation of hybrid jobs and the evolution of what's happening. And they're saying hybrid jobs are less likely to be automated because it's this very complex yet specialized form of talent. And more companies are hiring for that because they need that. And so this is just a new landscape. We are literally at the precipice, about to watch how it unfolds.